Today I'm here with a writer-director, Athena. Athena, could you tell us a little bit more about you?
I'm a writer director in film. I also teach filmmaking at Queen Mary University and run the MA in documentary there. And I suppose my background really came from theatre. So I moved into film by accident. So I've got, like anyone working or trying to work, maybe not now in the pandemic, but there's always lots of projects that one has in development, in pre-production, and with the aim that one day they're going to go into production. And fortunately, I've got a couple that are in post-production, so it makes me feel at least things are happening.
The way we met was through Bea. She worked on one of your films that you wrote the script for and you also directed, that was Losing Grace. Can you tell us a little bit more about that script and how it came together?
That was a really interesting project, and it's one of those projects that probably one should run away from. But one of the things that I work very closely or love to have is good relationships. So the project came about through a friend who you also know, actually, Liz Farahadi, who's an actor. And she was developing a project for a feature. And I mean, I love Liz and I love working with her. And she came to me with an idea for a short, which wasn't this. And it was very convoluted and very complex. But there was something in the original idea about a relationship between a mother and daughter that I liked. So we started working on it together. For me at the time, I suppose, to be honest, I didn't think anything was going to happen with it. But I loved just the chance to just develop this with Liz and build a relationship with the view of doing the feature Polly. And soon, because Liz has so much energy, for me, it was a really great chance to be working with someone who in a way, I felt like on an equal level footing in about as much in terms of what one can give. And she was giving a lot and I was giving a lot. And actually this thing was driving itself. It was coming along. And so we were just running with it. And before we knew it, we had a really viable project that came about, developed from an idea about a cult to then being a story about a mother and daughter to then being about domestic abuse. Those three stages happened through the script development, and it happened through allowing both of us being quite open about giving it out and getting notes and discussing the notes and really examining what is this, what can we tell within the format of a short film. And because quite often I feel that with short films one can either run away and try and tell too much story, or one tries to do, it's just a gimmicky, or it's too on the nose. Trying to pitch it right was quite hard. But we were really fortunate that we had some really good readers in the early stages that suddenly, when it became about domestic abuse, we thought, oh my God, this feels really right. And it felt really right because it linked more so, ironically, to the feature project that we're developing. And this was always a gateway to go, right, we need to get a really good quality short together as a team. So we've got something to kind of open the doors for the feature. So that came about through that collaboration with Liz. So Liz is also in the film, and it was always a case of having a film that we can showcase Liz's acting ability, because she wants to be, and completely right to be, in Polly. And so it on one part, it was a very kind of sort of engineered exercise, but actually the creative process became really organic. And Bear came on board. So when we were discussing it quite early on with the producer we had at the beginning, Aradna Tayal, one of the very strong things that she brought to the project was that it should be a very strong female crew because, and also Bayomi, and just trying to kind of reach out, not to the usual suspects that one always turns to. So I've got the DP that I work with, and I love, Babby, and I thought, okay, so I need to find a female DP. And just literally on Facebook, on one of these groups, Bear had posted her recently cut showreel. And I don't normally look at these things, but I looked at it and I loved what I saw. There was something about her work that really spoke to me. And I messaged her, and we met up the following week and sent her the script. And really, we were really lucky that we had this year before shooting. It was exactly 12 months of conversations, impromptu meetings, talking about the work, sharing ideas through WhatsApp. We got to shoot very early on a trailer, I say trailer, kind of a teaser for the crowdfunding. And that was a really good exercise as well. To just, and that was okay. We had literally, I borrowed a camera from work. We had 3 hours, I think, to shoot something. We found a field somewhere near where we lived, and we shot it in the morning. But what was good about that was it showed that we can all work with what we have, and we're not, there's people, I think, in the industry, and especially at starting on, well, I can't make this because I haven't got X, Y, and Z, or I don't have the right lenses, or I don't have the right locations, I haven't got any money, I haven't got. But we were like, well, we've got each other, we've got the people in this film, we've got a camera, let's just do it. Let's just, try and get the tone of this film that we were talking about on screen. And that really helped, I think, make us all feel this was happening. And this was happening in our heads before we even had a penny to put down on this. So we were really like going, no, we're making this film. This is going to be like this. We're going to use animal fit lenses. We want it to look like this. And we were just in that dream world and completely not allowing the sort of what the apparent reality of lack of funds get in the way. And interestingly, it all came together to make the film we wanted to make. I think we were all very clear about what we wanted this to look like. I mean, we wanted everything to be on the screen, the sort of the high-endness of the short film, because we all know there's different stages of short films, and we've all made them along those stages. But if you want to move to that next tier, which is feature, it has to sort of tick those boxes. That's the hope. We don't know yet, because obviously it's in post-production, and we're not the ones making the decisions where it goes. But in our heads, it's going to, Berlin, it's going to Sundance, it's doing the top ones.
Can you tell me a little bit about the story, and if we can dive a little bit more into the way you went about in terms of the script?
Like I said, it came to me as a very complex story about a cult, about a girl joining a cult, being stuck in a cult, and then escaping the cult. And it was a feature film or a series, I mean, it took Liz like half an hour to tell the story. So you can imagine, already it felt like this was going to be like, this is how you can't tell it in 10 minutes. So we got this 15-page jam-packed story, and there was no space to actually develop the characters or develop the situations that arose to the situations that you were trying to deal. It was really quite plot driven, but actually demanded more character development. Why was this girl doing this? Why was this happening? But there was no room for that. So I knew that, but I have this wonderful reader, Funke, who when I need that sort of hard truth, I sent it to Funke, and I knew what she would say, but it meant that I would begin to have that conversation with myself, which is, right, this doesn't work. So we got that, but we had this thing popped up, which was in the Palace pitching competition in Bulgaria. So we went, well, let's just send something to that. Who knows what will happen? And we got selected, and I couldn't go I think I was in a screening in Cyprus with another short film, and so Liz went, and Liz pitched it, and you know Liz, and Liz has this bountiful energy, and she's up there telling this story with so much passion, blah blah. And I think that resonated with some of the people. The project didn't win, and that didn't surprise me. The project had a lot of work to go, but it meant that it got enough dialogue to begin that process. So we had another conversation with someone who came on quite early on, interested in developing this, and it was like, obviously the script isn't ready, but there's something here, and so it meant that we were sort of going, oh, this is happening. So we developed it then for Euroscript, and the great thing about sending sort of drafts through to all these different processes is that it pushes the project forward. And I'm a great believer of that. So a lot of the time, you send it through, not because you're going to win or you think you're going to win, but because you get a dialogue. And we got the feedback. And it was really interesting because there was two people who, so step back a bit. When we went back to develop the story, and we went, right, okay, this is too much story for a short film. Let's put the cult thing aside for a second. What's really interesting is this relationship between a mother and daughter, and the relationship between, a very controlling mother and the need for a young sort of 13-year-old, 14-year-old wanting to break out from that sort of controlling environment. So the idea came to me of maybe what if we do a modern retelling of Rapunzel? So the mother as this kind of negative character as opposed to a positive force. So the mother, and look a little bit at that kind of representation of female insanity that one sees quite a lot in folklore and in stories, and see how we can play that through a sort of thriller genre. So that's the script that we ended up evolving and sending through to Euroscript. And we got really interesting feedback. So we had 4 different readers look at it, and we got to see their reports, and 2 of them loved it. And the other 2 went, this is really predictable, the ending. So the ending was that the father comes and rescues the girl. And I was like, oh my God, that's totally right. It is predictable. Once you know that this is happening, you've lost interest in it. So, and then I went, what if actually she isn't mad? That's the whole point. Women are quite easily told that they're mad, but actually she's the one running from a genuine fear. And that when this father arrives, it isn't to save. We know that's her losing her child, because he has all the appearances and trappings of someone that we can trust, whereas this woman who's got a whole lifetime of abuse is on the edge, and also she doesn't want to be found out. So that's coming out in her character, and people are like, maybe she's not okay, and the daughter's, she's not the best person to look after this child. So that was the turning point, and that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, had we not been sending it out and getting that feedback. So I think the one thing I would say to draw from this in terms of writing is that writing is the first step. The rest of it is the rewriting. So how do you go from rewrite 1, 2, and 3 if you don't show your work to other people? And you have to be prepared for notes. And I think that's one of the things that, so I teach screenwriting, and I'm really aware when I give notes to my students, I get this sort of very sort of like, kind of resistance to them thinking that I'm attacking them. But actually, notes are so much part of the writing process, and they're not, good. There's good notes and there's bad notes, and we've all, we've experienced the whole plethora of that. But as a writer, you need to really be able to hear what is being said underneath the words. So someone might give you a suggestion. That's not what you're focusing on. Actually, what they're saying is that at that point, this isn't working. If I need to go and find a suggestion for you, then there's the beat here that's missing. And it might be a subtle thing. It might just be a retweak, but you need to know the story that you want to tell. So the feedback is what I find drives the quality of the work, the dialogue about the work, the constantly talking. So, for us, we were developing this. So, it was being constantly evolved through every conversation. So the conversation that I had with Bear, when we sat down and looked at what was, say, the finished script, by discussing those shots, we were like, oh, okay, actually, no, that could be told really simply by just this, or what, because this is what really we're trying to say here. So everything was about story. And so when we were discussing shot lists and frame sizes, etc., that was all about story. When we did the trailer for the film, I mean, I say trailer, the teaser for the crowdfunding. So we were fortunate that we had the actors that were going to be in the film. That was originally the first scene in the film. But once we did the teaser, I said to Bear, we don't need that now. We can just start with them on the boat. We don't need this whole thing of them leaving the house. It felt like it was quite good to have it out of the way. And, so that then pushed it down. So for me, the location is really important, and geography and space are a layer of story. So film is just so many layers that tell story. The script, in a way, has to give room for those things to work. So it was very important that we all went out for a recce. So we organized a recce trip where Bear went to the Isle of Man. We went with Donna McKenvitt, who was our composer, took her out. So we had like the creative team out there for 3 days. The producer, Radna, was there, me and Liz, and we went around to the locations. We looked at the island. So in the story, there's this, we were playing with the idea of having a live musician. So almost like the chorus to the story, the audience. So the characters in the story don't see the person playing the music. The person playing the music is almost the audience to this tragedy unfolding. And I got that idea from watching.
I was going to ask you, what were your inspirations for this film?
So stylistically, it came from The Return. I loved that Russian film. The same filmmaker, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, who did Leviathan. And the idea of having live music came from this Icelandic film last year, I think. It did Sundance and then went out on a small release. God, it was the woman who, it'll come back to me. Okay. And in that film, so it's about a woman who's fighting to save the environment, and it's done in a really interesting style. And in this film, you've got this kind of chorus of a band that does the soundtrack in a live situation. So they're responding to the action in the scene. And coming from a theatre background, I always loved when music was integrated into the actual performance. So this was one of these crazy ideas that I loved the film. And when we went to an event that was about the Isle of Man, shooting on the Isle of Man, and it was one of these, impromptu things that just sort of happened, and we were available to go, like we literally find out the day before. Mira Royale was there, and she's a coveted young musician, harpist. And the moment that I went, oh my God, wouldn't it be great to just have this? I just had this idea of having a harp in the middle of some of these scenes. And it was one of those things where you think, I don't know if this is just me trying to be clever. Is it going to work? Or is this completely stupid? And I remember having that conversation with Bear. I went, is this going to work? Or is this just completely going to draw away from what we're trying to say? She went, look, let's just shoot it with and without. Anyway, the moment we put her in the scene, it was evident that it worked. And so we didn't have to shoot without. So the point I'm trying to make in a very roundabout way is that the script is constantly being developed. You need to be open to those things. So the place will give you a lot of ideas about how the story will work. So, once we were in situation, once we knew where our locations were, then it was like, oh my God, what if then, we have that scene where we don't have a scene where they arrive. Let's have that scene where they arrive, because we can show this place. I mean, the house, originally in the script, it was like a derelict house. And then when we arrived on the island on our second trip, I thought, what if it's not a derelict house? What if it's like because there's lots of really beautiful, impressive houses on the Isle of Man. A lot of them are empty. And I said, what if she has access to one of these gorgeous houses? And we were driving to find where we were going to stay. And we'd met this woman online who'd loved the project and said, you can come and stay in my cottages. And so we were on our way to these cottages. And as soon as I said, what if it's this massive, those white Georgian houses with the big windows and, quite hidden behind the woods, we turn a corner, go up the driveway, and there's this house that we've just all been talking about. And we were like, oh my God, what? Are we staying there? So we went around the corner where all the cottages were, met Marsha, who was our angel, because she then became more than just giving us access to things. And we were like, should we ask her about the house? This was her house that she lived in. And at that time, we were being very naive and, like, oh, but it's only going to be one room. We're only going to use the kitchen. But maybe we might just use the hallway. She was like, oh, sure, you can use my house. Yeah, come on. She was American. So we saw this house and we went around it. And Bear was like, I'm not sure if this can work. I was like, no, there's something about this house that is just perfect. And I went again before for another recce, and I was staying with her for the 3 days, and was wandering around going, oh my God, this is just so the story. And Marsha was wonderful. She let us literally just strip out everything from our home. And so we got very lucky. But like I say, that location became part of the story, because everything we were looking at in terms of, is it telling the story you want to tell? So you have to be free to keep changing, evolving.
Of course. In terms of the final story, if I ask you, what is the story of Losing Grace? What did you get to?
The story which was very early on, was once we kind of set up the crowdfunding, it was about a mother and daughter fleeing from an abusive relationship and seeking refuge on an island, so that they thought that they could be safe before they can move on somewhere more permanent. So it was always a stopgap, in between place for them to sort out their paperwork, if you like, and move on. So it was about seeking safety and refuge. How far can someone push you? And so we were always looking for an isolated rural location, the kind of place that you think, where's the last place you would go that someone could find you? And the Isle of Man kind of came up as an idea quite early on, actually. So Liz had gone out there for something else quite randomly, and when she was talking about it, I thought, oh my God, that would be amazing for Losing Grace. I didn't even know where the Isle of Man was. Just saw the pictures, and I just saw that it was far away. I confused it with the Isle of Wight, but it's quite north. And so when we went out for our first trip, it cemented it. So that became very early on in the story about what this story was about, which was about a woman trying to keep her daughter safe, because she knows that, and this is a reality, so about the situation, which is when women do come out and say, I'm being abused, one of the things that does happen is that their children are taken away from them. So we wanted to explore that reality of going, what can I do as a parent to keep my child safe? And so it's called Losing Grace, because that's her fear, and that's the reality for her at the end as well.
And in terms of the, how did you go about the funding for the film? Because obviously you shot the trailer, and you had, as you mentioned, you were very lucky that you met a lot of people that helped you on the way of making this film. But did you, in the end, end up applying for funding, getting some funding, and how did that work? Because I feel like it's a very important aspect that filmmakers need to kind of like understand it. So whatever advice you can give us in that respect would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, so funding is that holy grail, isn't it? You see other people, it's like, where does one start? I mean, we knew we knew we had about 25,000 we needed to shoot this in the way that we wanted to shoot it. So the first thing that obviously we all do is to apply to the BFI network. And that it's quite a long process. But one of the things that we did early on with this film was to not wait for permission. So by that, I mean, we were playing things like multi-stranded. We didn't wait for the BFI to say yes or no before we started the crowdfunding campaign. We just went, look, let's just start this. Because the sooner we start the crowdfunding campaign, we'll start raising money, but also we're starting a dialogue about film. So we applied everywhere, and we're still applying because we still need post-production money. But the first thing we did was to apply to BFI, and that took about 100 weeks before they got back to us. And in the meantime, we set up the crowdfunding campaign. And we did that through Greenlit, which was at the time quite a new platform for just film. And Peter was very supportive with us, so we had no commission to pay. And that's why we shot the little trailer, because we thought, right, we need a little film to entice people. We did that. But what I would say with the crowdfunding campaign is it's not just about money. I will urge anybody to start a crowdfunding campaign for a film, because it's a platform for dialogue about the work. And on that platform, you attract interested parties. So we launched this crowdfunding campaign. On the page, it's all about us shooting in the Isle of Man, and this is the story, this is what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. Because of that, we found out that there was an event in London that was looking at people wanting to shoot in the Isle of Man. So we went, and there we met all the kind of people from Isle of Media, which we got on with, and we went, oh, this seems quite reasonable. I mean, at this point, we didn't even know if shooting on the Isle of Man was a realistic option. We didn't really know anyone. So we went, okay, so we need to go to the Isle of Man. So we went to the Isle of Man, and because the Isle of Man is a small island of 80,000 people, you can imagine things it's not like London where you have to like book a point, you can't meet anyone. So we literally rang up, we arrived. So we had the event on Tuesday. I was talking to Liz about going the following week, not the next week, the week after that, but she couldn't go because it was half term or something. So I said, well, we've got to go next week then. So we booked our tickets blindly to go. We went, and I'd emailed everyone and said, right, we're here, we're arriving on Tuesday. We really love to meet up, the people that we'd met. And they got back. When we were there, we phoned up the Isle of Man Arts Council, and we got meetings straight away. And there was another organisation, Culture Vannin, which we met up as well. So we had these meetings back to back. We got onto the radio, started talking about the project. We met we were literally 3 days, we didn't stop meeting people. So when we went to the Isle of Man, we had quite an interesting package already with the project. So when you're looking at funding, it isn't just your script. I think a lot of writer-directors, especially writers, I would say, think that it's all about the script. But what funders, I think, are more interested in looking at is kind of where are you aware of communicating your story to an audience? What is this going to look like? So although they never say it, it's one of those optional things at the bottom that says, have you in any visual, things that you've got, add them in. That, I would say, is a must. You need to have like a pitch deck or a look book or whatever you want to call it, a visual treatment that you can put together that kind of expresses what this story is. No one's going to read your script and know what this is. That's the last thing they're going to do. So it just shows that you were serious about making this as well. So I think those materials are really, really important. So we had a really great looking visual treatment. We had the script. We had already committed to working with one of the harpists from the island. And we wanted this to be not just us coming in, bringing everyone in, but to try and find as many people from the island that can work on the project as well, and have it as a sort of training element to them and add to their bow. So we had a really interesting package, which they loved and urged us to apply. And we kind of knew we were going to get the money. So because we had created that relationship and we had that dialogue about the work. So that 5,000 from the Arts Council was fantastic. And meanwhile, we've got the crowdfunding campaign. So the crowdfunding campaign, because we approached it as a platform to talk about the work and the issues that are contained within this work, we had kind of organized ourselves so we knew each week of the campaign what we were going to be discussing, what kind of, Facebook pages we were going to put out there, what Twitter feeds we were going to talk about. So it wasn't just, please give us money, we're making a film. In fact, that was the last thing that we were doing. A lot of it was, this is what this film is about. So one week it was all about female directors. The other week it was all about, issues around domestic violence, profiling organizations. We did lots of different things, but we'd planned it. We'd planned what we were going to say. So then it became easy to kind of work, because it's a very time intensive activity. You can't just set it up and people will come. So because you've got to push that first 2,000 is the people and the people that everyone involved knows. But in order to make the kind of money, you have to push beyond that.
What was the target?
We put down 10,000 on the crowdfunding, and we got close to it, and then the rest we put in to make it to 10, and then we had the 5 from Island Media, and then when did we get? No, we didn't get Island. Sorry, Arts Council. So we had 15, and then the producer put in some money as well, and then we were still short because we were going, right, what do we need to actually shoot this? So I had another organization, the Wish List, put some money in as well. I know, Together Stronger. I need to name them right. I have to remind you what they're called. But so a friend of mine runs a charity that deals with some of the issues, domestic children that are brought up in domestic abuse situations, and they put money in as well. And that made us kind of have enough to actually shoot it. And then, of course, it's things like VAT return. So you can register your company with VAT. So, of course, if our hire cost was 9,000, but if you take away VAT, that's a big sum of money. Everything that you're paying VAT. So we got then another nearly £3,000 from the VAT man. That goes back in. So that kind of helps, add to your bundle. So it was thinking about things in strategy. So
you mentioned the BFI funding. How did that end?
No.
Okay.
Didn't get it. But I wasn't. I didn't think we would. I think the BFI are very youth centered. So we're not sexy and young for them. So I didn't think we were going to get it. We didn't even get a reason why, but that I felt my feeling. I've been to their screenings and I felt, okay, everyone here is 21.
So they probably also have a huge amount of applications.
And they have their own priority list, and that has to be respected. But it is always worth applying, because what you're doing by applying to these agencies that are important within the industry is that you're reminding them that you're out there making films.
And at the same time, you are also making something. So you're creating a presentation, you're writing down the script, you're writing down the treatment. All these things are super important to make you, first of all, understand your film. Because if you can't talk about your film clearly, if someone asks you what the film about, and you start saying, oh, it's, this and then that and then this, and you're unable to say it within 3-4 sentences, and make it super clear so that the other person understands it, there's a problem with your film. I think
Absolutely. That's why crowdfunding is so important, because it forces you to make a presentation in 30, 60 seconds max that tells the world, this is what this film is, please help us make it. And if you can't do that in that space, then you don't know your work. So everything that pushes you to articulate your story, and that's what writing is. Writing isn't just the script. Writing is you articulating this story at every stage of that development process, then at every stage of that pre-development, and then pre-production, then through production and post. It runs right through the entire if you like, system of film. So it isn't ever done. And that's why applying to every opportunity, whether it's Euroscripts or BFI, Creative England, depending where you live, there's all of these things, apply to them. It's not about getting it. Your story will have moved forward, your clarity would have moved forward each time you have to present that. Each time you have to create that work around this, do it. And that's why crowdfunding is essential. It's the first test that you know what you're talking about.
Let's go back to our case study, your film, Losing Grace, and the funding. So you said you got some money and that you can start the production process. You've already shot the film. The film is in post-production. How did you go about the post-production? Are you still applying for further funding, or do you think it can be done with what you had already? So did we say 15 grand more or less, or no, 25?
We went in with 23,000. So when we broke it down and went, right, okay, what's our production budget? Like a real cost budget. You've got to feed people, we've got to move around, we've got to hire kits, we've got to bring people onto the island, we've got to bring them off, we've got to pay them. So our budget was, we needed 23, like pretty much like, and then of course there's stuff that happens, like you crashed the van and you've got to pay, the van.
Did you crash a van?
Yep.
Oh, that wasn't budgeted though.
Punctured. Oh, no. I mean, these things happen.
Of course.
So it was us actually driving on the day that we had to leave, and we needed to take the van. So we had like 12 hours to go and pick up all the kits, and we had the car rig was down in Battersea, and we were in North London for all the camera equipment, and we drove down with all the equipment in the van to Battersea, and the driver wasn't really the best drivers in the world. He won't mind me saying it, but we were going up, and he turned to go up Embankment Bridge. Now I'm not a driver, but it was one of those bridges that narrows, so you can't take a big van in, but he tried to squeeze our van in, and it got wedged inside these bollards. And we stopped all the traffic in London. Like I thought I was going to, I never thought I was going to have a heart attack until that day. I literally thought, that's it, we're fucked, because we cannot, what can we do? I had images of, helicopters and police coming to pull us out. We couldn't. I mean, we had like a ton of kit in the car. Fortunately, two very lovely Albanian builders went, why don't you push it? I'll get out and push it for you. And we're like, how are you going to push this van? No. Literally, the guy got out and just pushed it over the bollard, and we were okay. We just scraped the side, and we were on our way. But it was 750 quid.
Yeah. In terms of where the bulk of the kind of like, to understand, when you've got a budget that is 23 grand, that is it's a high budget for, you can say it's a high budget for a short film. Most of my films, the maximum that I spent on the last film, for example, I spent 1,500 euros. So that's 1,300 pounds. And the other two films that I made, Blind Date and Introspect, I spent 500 pounds each. So very, very little. And that obviously because no one got paid, and we found the location and everything through friends, or actually on Introspect, I rented the location on Airbnb. Actually, that's something really interesting that a lot of people could find very helpful.
It's very helpful.
it's very helpful, Airbnb, but you have to be mindful of the fact that not everyone wants to have a 5 or 10 people crew in their house.
You have to
So
be honest.
you have to be honest, and that's what I did. But out of 10 properties that I emailed, I got 2 that said yes, and one of them said yes, but you have to give me more money. But luckily, the one that said yes was actually the perfect location that I kind of like wanted.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Although,
Airbnb is wonderful for locations. I mean, so I teach my final years at university. They have to make short films, and they don't have any money, so they do a crowdfunding campaign, and the most they'll probably raise on average will be about £1,000. So they're working within that. So, but they're not, of course, it's 23,000 because you're paying for equipment, you're paying people. That
yeah.
that's
So
the
it's that
important
higher
thing.
end
That's
short
the
film
higher end. And with this
where
one,
the people
we
that work.
were, yeah, we were at that. And we weren't paying people a lot. We really were paying them £100 a day, and runners and assistants £50 a day. So, it wasn't a lot of people, and we weren't a massive crew. I mean, we were really, right, pared down. But we didn't want to compromise the film we wanted to make for this. I have made those films as well. You can make a film with very little, and that's great. But I think with this one, we all felt that it needed Steadicam,
Yeah.
and that's not something you're gonna just. That's a skill in itself.
Yeah, of
And
course.
and we were really lucky that we got Luke, who's a professional Steadicam operator with his proper Steadicam kit, and he came on for £100 a day. And that but it goes back to story again. It goes back to your commitment to your project. So how do you convince people to come on board a project like this and pay them so little? You're not paying them the 350 or 450 that they're probably commanding normally. And he dropped a job to do our project, and that's to do with your belief in your work, and that the script is good, and that you've got ambition for it as well. You're not shying away from that ambition. You might not get it, doesn't matter, but you really are working towards making the best you can with what you have. And the other thing that is really important, and I think doesn't really get talked about, is how you treat everyone. And so for me, what was really important was food. One thing I wasn't going to feed these people was Domino pizzas, and if it meant that I had to get up at 5 a.m. every day and make sure that I was cooking, or I cooked for the whole cast and crew for 4 days, 5 days, because we include the day we arrived, I was prepared to do that, because I knew that has massive leverage. Yes, it wouldn't have been cheaper, but we could have done it easier by just bringing in cheap pizzas. But you try, and for Luke, who just come off a feature film where every day they ate Domino pizzas, he said to me after,
Wow.
do you know what? One of the reasons I came on this, because I heard that your food was good. So we got we got the Steadicam because of the food, and I had to also convince our first camera assistant that, look, this isn't. I know we're going to be, working hard, but we are looking after you. We've got really nice accommodation, and I'm cooking, so you're not going to eat crap. Nutrition's really important. So we had a long conversation about food before he said yes, because I think people are going, okay, I can do the low pay, but I really can't be asked like 3 or 4 days eating shit. I really can't do it. However good this project is, really. So everything you do has to be the best of your ability. You know what I mean? You've got to strive for the best. So yes, it was 23 that we needed in real money, but that's not counting all the stuff in kind that we got, which probably took it to 30 at least. But going back to your question about funding, I think with this one, if you're not paying people, and I think you've got to know early on what's the film you're making, okay? And there is no better or worse. It's just where are you in your career, in your trajectory? What do you want this short film to do? And what do you have available to you? And what are you prepared to put in? You know, I've made films I'm not prepared to put money in. But there are films that I think, no, this one is really important. And if I have to put it on the credit card, I will. And so with this one, we were all quite clear this was actually punching quite high. It was punching quite high because we have Bear on board. We have got, now we're talking about Steadicam, we're talking about boats, we're talking about drones, we're talking about things that are going to elevate its visual aesthetic quality. And so
you've got those production values. So you said you've got, what is very important is a really good story, a really good script, a really good team, production values, and then you can make your film happen.
You have some bit of blind faith as well. So you can't, what we didn't do is wait. Let's wait to get the money, and then let's move to the next step, which is bring in the crew, and then let's work to the next stage and find locations and work with the money that we have. You have to kind of have an idea of how much money do you think you might have in a sort of imagined real world, sort of dreaming, and go for it. And then if you don't get there, then you have the choice of going, okay, can we shoot this? Do we need to go to the Isle of Man? I mean, obviously in our case we did, because we got there. That's the only, money that we got. So, if that didn't happen and we had to then go, can we shoot this in Devon? Would it be cheaper? Can we do that? What can we do that can still tell us a story with what we have? For us, it was very clear, we were paying people.
So in a way, you were planning for different scenarios as well, having that kind of like different levels. So yes, you know where you're aiming at, but you know that you might not get it. You know that you want this film to be made, therefore you slowly build it, but you also do the best that you can with what you have.
Yes. So for us at Christmas, it was the real crossroads. And when we went in to shoot, we didn't have everything. But it was a decision to go, we got enough to wing it. And that's why the VAT return was very helpful, because that's quite a sizable amount of money that helped,
to push it forward.
So that was something that I kind of knew about, and I thought, okay, I'm going to apply for VAT registration, and then I can put, and the good thing about VAT registration, I think people don't realize it, is that it comes straight away. You apply it whenever the date is that you have to apply, and then the next week you've got the money in your account. So it's not like other tax things. And then there's also, I don't know if people know, is with short films, you can also get back 25% of 80% that you spent through tax return. So there's advice on this on the HMRC website. Also, BFI has a link to it. So once the film is finished, and this is how we're going to finance our distribution side of it, is to apply for that money. So that, that's another £6,000-7,000 coming back, which will help us with the festival strategy.
Okay, so that still has to come in.
But you can only apply for it once the film is finished. So the idea is you send it takes about 12 weeks all in all. It's all very clearly set out. And I think a lot of people doing short films don't realize that they have access to that money. So I would say when you're financing a project, you need to think about the finance in 3 stages. You need to think about your finance and go, okay, the production, what is it that we really need to shoot the film we want to shoot? And can we raise it? And then go, right, post-production you can do through your VAT return, or apply for completion funds, which we're also doing. But we've also got an amazing editor on board who is also doing our sound edit as well, and he's very happy to wait for payment. So we've got that relationship. He's not getting paid a lot, but we've got we can look at completion funding, and then for distribution you can look at the tax return. And it doesn't matter whether your film cost 5,000 to make or it costs, 50,000 to make. They will still give you 25% of 80% that you have spent.
Yeah.
So that's
What's your
on a £5,000, it's £1,000.
So obviously the film is in post-production, but I wanted to ask you a little bit how do you approach the distribution side?
Right, for this one, I've made films, and you send them into festivals, etc., etc. But one thing I've realized about festivals is that when you are sending them blindly, your chances are very slim, because there's a tier of all festivals have relationships with filmmakers and organizations and bodies that fund films. Those films take precedence over yours. So even if your film is good, it might not make it in there, because if you're BFI funded, definitely going to get into the festivals. If you're Creative England funded, get into the festivals. If it's a BBC short film, it will get into the festivals. If Channel 4 put money into it, it will get into all the festivals, because people have these relationships. If you've made a film before at that festival, your next film will go into that festival regardless. So by the time you trickle down and then you apply in the dark, it's a real lottery whether your film will get in. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, I think if you're applying to festival, you always need to apply at the early bird stage. Do not leave it later. You're wasting your money. So that's if you go blindly. Now, there are two organizations that I know of, and there might be more. There's Festival Formula and the Festival Doctor, who basically look at your film. They have relationships with the main festivals, and they can say, no, this is great. I can see this at Toronto, or it's not really a Sundance film, but it's definitely a Berlin film, or etc. So they know what each of these festivals are looking for. And I think that's very important for people to recognize, is that it isn't just about the film, it's about how your film is going to fit into their program. So if you don't have that information, and the way to get it is to do a lot of research, look at what films were there the year before, the previous years, what kind of films have been winning, what kind of films get there. And is your film one of these films? And if it isn't, don't waste your money. And there's thousands of festivals, so it's quite time consuming. So for this, we are going to go to Rebecca at Festival Doctor. So she has these 3 packages, and part of her job is to market the film accordingly. So, together you identify what are the main festivals that this film has a strong chance in, and she will lobby it. And then you go through, you pay to submit, but you also pay them a fee. That's why the tax return money coming back will be very helpful for that. Because I think if we just went, let's just send it in, I think it's like a needle in a haystack. It may get picked up, it may not. There isn't really a strategy. So I think more and more, because people are strategizing, if you're not, it gets lost. So I think people have got very savvy to this. And if you want your film to do well at the festivals that count, I think there's probably about 100 in the world that, really matter. And it doesn't have to be a big festival. Again, you have to think about, what is it you want out of your film? Do you want, for example, for lots of people to see it, or do you want to get an award so you can have a laurel, or what is it that matters to you? And it's okay that it's like, actually, I just want it to be played at whatever, or at maybe not festivals, maybe online. Especially comedies. I think comedies are probably harder to make it at those top end, because they're more about important issues, films that have substance. So if you've got a really nice fluffy film, don't waste your money. Send it into comedy festivals, but also put it online, because if you get 100,000 hits, then you know what, BBC comedy commissioners are looking at it, and you might then have a conversation.
So what is that let me ask you this question that you just asked. What is that you want from your film?
we want it to play at the top festivals. We want it to be BAFTA nominated and to win a BAFTA, right? That's what we want. Because with that, then we're in the room to have a conversation about the feature projects.
So the end goal is the feature project.
Yeah. For us, the end goal is the feature project, definitely.
That is at the moment in pre-production. Are you writing the script?
Yes. So I've got two. I've got one where the script is finished and we're now looking to raise finance on it. And that was a script that went to Xenos. So that's also, that's a step ahead. And then there's Polly, which I'm doing with Liz. And that one is, we're just writing the script now. But we've done we've done the treatment, we've done development on it. And so now we're doing the script with the view of getting a producer on board. And it's not a big budget one. So we're using this lockdown time really to just go, let's just make sure that the sort of the development side of things is in place so we can come out and do that. And meanwhile, you know, I've got another short film that's ready to go. That's the one with Lynn, actually, daughter.
What budget are you looking for the feature?
For Polly, the feature one.
Yeah.
So the one with Liz, Polly, well, I think we can shoot that with 350.
£350,000. Okay.
500,000. We don't need that much on that one because it's quite contained. And then my other one is €1 million.
The other one that you are writing, okay.
The one that's written and ready to go. That one's the one that went to Torino. It's called Xenos. Yeah, okay. Set in Cyprus.
And what about, you just mentioned the other short film that you, I don't know, did you shoot or did you write?
The one that we're going to shoot. I didn't write it. It's written by Joe Harper, a really great writer. And that one I put a call out actually with, and that one got shortlisted by Film London. And we got quite far in the process, but we didn't get the money. And then we developed the script a little bit further. And that one, Babak Jani, who's a cinematographer who teaches at Bournemouth now, but he set up a scheme to have films made. So we got onto that, and he's shooting it, and we've got a great producer on that as well. We've got a great executive producer. We've got an amazing team, and we've got an amazing script. So we're just launching, you know, in the next week or so, the campaign for that. We don't need a lot of money on that, and that's one that's interesting. We only need about 3,000. So, but it's still, you know, it's a phenomenal script. And it's a real one. It's a story about a woman who decides, you know, in her late 30s that she's going to go and find her birth mother, and so she's mixed race and arrives and sees a very white woman and realizes, you know, and actually doesn't have the feelings that she thought she was going to have, but she realizes she has a sister or half sister who has a baby, and it becomes about motherhood again, about, you know, the expectations of what one should feel or doesn't feel, and adoption, and looks at that complex relationship. So it's about mother-daughter relationships.
How long do you think it will be?
10, 12 minutes, not long.
Okay. And what about Losing Grace?
Losing Grace, I think it will be about 12 minutes.
12 minutes, okay. Yeah, that's a very good length.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think people making short films, do not make anything longer than that, especially if no one knows you from Adam, because when programmers are trying to put short films in, you know, it's very hard to program a 20-minute film, even harder, 30. And sometimes less is more. If you've got a 6-minute film that's punches, great, easy to get in because you can fit it into slots. So time is really important, especially if you're looking for festivals.